Hey everyone, and welcome. I am so excited today. We're with Brian King and we're talking about inspiring math, talking about love of math, and really getting down to talking about what the heck do we do we want them to learn math, but we want them to not also, hate it. And sometimes kids are really good at math and they think, oh, well, our kids are really good at math. They like doing math, but do they like math? Is the really question, because sometimes they like doing it because they're pretty good at it. They feel successful, but are they curious about it? Are they really hungry for it? That's something they're two different things. And Brian is an expert in this topic. He's been teaching math in the public school system, teaching math at the university level, teaching math, not just teaching it in terms of like, okay, we have our regular textbooky thing, but also different ways of thinking about even practical stuff like financial math. I mean, we all wish we had that in high school. So this is really exciting because I've been really wanting to have this conversation for a really long time. If you haven't listened to You're Teaching Math Wrong in the previous episode, it's kind of way back there, but you have to listen to that because it was based on this really amazing article called A Mathematician's Lament. And it was talking about, I think it's Paul Lockhart, right, Brian? So Paul Lockhart that wrote it, and he was talking about how we teach math backwards. And so I really want to explore this topic because we can tend to take we take the mechanics of it first, and then we focus on maybe the joy later if they still have any left. And so that's really something that I think if we flip on its head, which we do with a lot of other activities and a lot of other subject matters, it can create so much amazingness and so much hunger for the curiosity of math, which I think is exciting. So Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited. He's also doing math tutoring, which is amazing, and we'll talk more about that later. But Brian, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and just why you love teaching math in a fun and engaging, like curious sort of way?
Yeah, thanks, Cami. I've been a teacher for 10 years, teaching mainly algebra courses at the high school level. But I think the reason that I care so much about engagement is because, well, first of all, it's just the most effective way to reach high school students. This is primarily who I work with. Also, it's more engaging for me. I like it. It feels more meaningful, and it is more meaningful. But I would also say that the main motivation for me when I was beginning my teaching career was reading the research, looking at different curriculums, and then practicing it and seeing that when you pursue deeper level thinking, things that have real relevance and meaning to students, even the kids at the bottom do better. The kids at the top also do better. And so realizing over time that there's a significant gap for almost everybody between being able to do math and do it well and caring about math or valuing math. And so, of course, many students who struggle don't value math at all. But also I found that many students in my AP Calculus class didn't value math either. They were good at it. They were good at thinking algorithmically, but they weren't necessarily good at thinking algebraically and being problem solvers. So yeah, that's how I got into what I would call teaching using mathematical modeling as much as possible, the deeper, higher order thinking skills. Of course, we want both for our kids. I want my daughters, who we homeschool, to be good at paper and pencil math, but also be critical thinkers and problem solvers. So they're both important, but I do think that if you chase down the algorithmic math learning that probably a lot of us had in public schools, you might get it, you might not. If you chase down the higher order thinking, you're likely to get both. You're likely to get the algorithm and the paper and pencil solving thrown in with the deeper understanding of quadratic patterns and relationships and things like that. So that's why I just think it's better. It's also more fun, but mainly it's just better and it's more real. And I think nowadays it's really important that our kids believe that what we are saying is important is important. And it's, a lot of the math we teach in public schools and even in homeschool through lots of the click-through courses that are out there doesn't pass the straight face test to our kids that it actually does really matter.
Absolutely. I think we're always trying to find ways to make things relevant, especially, when I was teaching English, I didn't do the normal system of just read a book and most of them are novels and things like that. It wasn't, I was thought about what do we read in our life normally, like a good 80 to 90% of it is nonfiction, is some kind of informational something. So why are we reading only fiction or mostly fiction in our English classes? This is something that, to make it relevant, I love that you say that. And to make it, I love also that you said, by the way, that the algebraic thinking. Sometimes we can think about that if we had a poor experience with math in high school. We think, oh, algebraic thinking, that's going to be hard, right? But you just
Right.
made the connection between algebraic thinking and actually just problem solving thinking. That's just what it is, which I love that. That's awesome. If we can get our kids to think like that instead of thinking, no, algebra, right?
Totally.
That's awesome. I love that. I want to just address really quickly about what it is that makes us so kind of standoffish to the math, and why we are taught in this analog sort of way.
I have a couple answers to that question. One reason, the shallow answer, one reason we're standoffish is because it's terrible. It's just boring. Nobody wants to do it. Yeah. And even those of us who really liked math or were given to math at a young age, the thing we liked about it was probably that we got a lot of positive reinforcement for doing a good job at it, more than we really liked it. I got a lot of positive reinforcement in middle school for math. I would have told you math was my favorite subject. I definitely wasn't reading math books on the weekend or doing math. It wasn't actually an interest for me. So that's the first part. But I think the other thing that makes it hard to value is a connection to anything real. And we don't really want to do things that are a waste of time often, especially if they're boring or monotonous. So I think the way that we teach it has been a problem for sure, and it doesn't really get at things that are natural to all people, like people being inquisitive and curious and wanting to figure stuff out is oftentimes not necessarily related to math at all. And so anyways, I think the answering kids' questions, and I love the question, why are we learning this? A lot of math teachers really do not like that question. Now, in AP Calculus, if a kid asked me that, I would say, well, because you signed up for AP Calculus. That's why you're learning this, right?
Right.
But for most kids who are going through classes they have to take, whether it's third grade math or middle school math or Algebra 2, I feel like as a teacher, but with my own daughters, I'm their parent and their teacher, we have an obligation to answer that question with some level of integrity, and there should be a good reason for it. And so I think it's hard to engage. It's a struggle to engage in mathematics education the way we do it in America at homeschool and in the public schools, because it seems so abstract. Really, mathematics, like formal mathematics, is supposed to be like the playing field where we take abstract reasoning in order to synthesize things and then go back to the real world. But instead, we're just doing this thing abstractly with no connection. And so when I talk about mathematical modeling, as much as possible, what I'm talking about is taking something, a real question, it doesn't have to be real world, but a real question about a pattern, usually real world is best, taking it into the abstract math world and doing the things we need to do to understand it better, and then going back with a real meaningful answer or observation about that pattern. I think that's what the heart of algebra is. And one way I like to describe it a lot, because in my mind, as we're talking, Cami, I have two things in my mind. One is my experience with high school and my education. But the other thing is my more recent experience and zero formal education on mathematics for small kids. My daughters are 5 and 7. And it's been so much fun. But I think for my daughters, I'm not telling them the word algebra right now, but definitely they should be thinking algebraically. I should be thinking about algebra for them as their teacher and their parent. They don't need to know that word. They'll learn it later. But I think of algebra as using what you know to figure out what you need to know. And so that's easier with the upper grades, especially if you talk about medicine or finances. There's lots of really good questions where you can study patterns and come up with answers. At the younger years, it's harder. And, my favorite ways to do it are usually just doing stuff outside in nature. But my two daughters watch a show called Tumbleleaf. I don't know if people have seen that out there, but the character's always saying, let me figure this out. And that's sort of, if I had to summarize algebra for a 5-year-old, it would be, let me figure this out. And go ahead and just figure stuff out together and begin that abstract reasoning process, even if it's not looking like numbers and letters written in equations.
That is such a great, great point. And I feel like we all need to come back there, even as adults when we're experiencing this with our kids, and go back there and that wonder again. That's one of the things that I started to do when I was working with my son, and one of this mentored book club we were in, it had us reading Euclid, right? And I was like, oh man, I'm super intimidated by that. I was like, I don't know if we can do it. And so we did it together because I knew he would probably have trouble with it, and I knew I would have trouble with it. And so we started reading it together, reading the propositions, reading all those things, and trying to figure out what he's saying and drawing it out. And he'd say a little bit, well, this way, and oh no, I think he means this line goes over here, and this line, da 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 da. And I was just so amazed at thinking about Euclid as a person and thinking, how amazing is it that someone just, what makes somebody come up with that stuff? Like, what makes somebody ask the question, what is this angle and how does it relate to that angle over there? Like, what does that questioning is so key to figuring out problems in every part of our life, right? And
Totally.
so I love that you ask that, and you know, that question of, you know, how do I figure, let's figure out a way to figure this out, or let's think on this. And that's so beautiful. And actually he ended up just reading a lot of it on his own. He ended up getting in the language and really starting to you know, get in the context, and he could be less questions happened later. It was really fun. But just the curiosity and that awe of saying, wow, I wonder what would make somebody ask that question, and why does it matter? I love that. I love that. That's so
Totally.
key. And so thinking about that as for 5-year-olds, that's a whole different, it's a much more simplified idea and something they're doing all the time, right? So
Totally.
they're always thinking about, well, what's that over there? What's this like this? Right.
Yeah, and you know, I think early is the time to start the thinking piece because, you know, they still have wonder and excitement and fun as children. I think one of the main reasons my wife and I homeschool is really just to make sure that our kids engage in like a full childhood and really embrace that. And we're not trying to get ahead or do academics, you know, faster, anything like that. But I look down the road and I have a couple of like things that stick out in my mind. One was in an AP calculus class I had, and they had all taken the AP exam, but they still had my final for public schools. Well, kind of meaningless to take a public school final when they've already all paid money for an AP. So yeah, so I gave them a different exam than the one that normally comes with our calculus classes here. It was 3 questions, and anybody who watches The Office out there might appreciate this on a deeper level. But there's 3 big topics in AP Calculus AB, which is limits, derivatives, and integration. So the test was 3 pages. Top of the first page, give the formal definition of limit. Top of the second page, give the formal definition of differentiation. Top of the third page, give the formal definition of integration. And so kids wrote down from this textbook, they had memorized it, you know. And then just under the space I gave them to write down the formal definition, I said, now explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, which, if you don't know, is a reference to Oscar describing surplus in the budget to Michael in The Office. Anyways, I posted the video of The Office on our Google Classroom with the test. But it was amazing how the kids who were 99, 100 in the class really struggled to explain it, and some of them just didn't. They just rewrote the formal definition with some words thrown in there. But some of the kids at the bottom of the class, which they're still obviously in AP Calculus, they're doing great. They had great explanations, and of course they also had memorized the definition because it was such a basic academic task. And I think about, like, again, I hope that my daughters one day are able to explain things in a meaningful way in their own words. You know, another thing I think about as far as the problem solving goes and its relationship to mathematics content is that the content, it's totally important. It's certainly less important than being a thinker and a problem solver. And I think about in 8th grade in our school district, they spend 2 weeks on scientific notation. You absolutely do not need to learn scientific notation for most jobs. but you totally need it for some things, and that's great. But I think about it, if you know what scientific notation is, it's actually so easy to learn. If you were 19 years old or older and your job needed you to know about scientific notation, 20 minutes maybe, because it's really just notation. There's not any reasoning or solving to be done really. But we spend 2 weeks in 8th grade. Meanwhile, these kids struggle with number sense, with quantitative reasoning, with basic abstract thinking, but we're giving time to this little piece of content. And I kind of make it, I make a metaphor in my mind to like changing a tire. I'm not going to teach my daughters to change a tire the right way. I hope that I raise learners and thinkers who one day when they get a flat tire, they pull out their phone and watch a 2-minute YouTube video and then change the tire on their own because they can learn it that fast. That's what I would do. And then, you know, coming all the way down, 2 weeks ago, we did this outdoor STEM learning thing I'm doing with a peer here at school. And my daughter was in it, and we were studying the amphibian migration, and we were collecting data and plotting the population on big grids in the middle of the woods. It was really cool, of salamanders. And so we posed the question like, okay, if this is how many salamanders we're finding in these grids here in the woods, how many salamanders are in the whole town or the whole state of Maine? And that's probably beyond a 5 and 7-year-old a good ways. And I kind of learned that as well as I'm learning all about little kids. But my daughter's first reaction was, well, you can't just count how many grids are in our town, because what about all the roads and the parking lots? Those have 0 salamanders. And so she's not doing anything mathematical. She's actually making an argument against the arithmetic I was going to suggest eventually. But that's totally algebraic thinking, making predictions about future values. That's the thinking that I think we need kids to start earlier. One last thing in this topic, when I first got hired, the amount of content in Algebra 1 is surprisingly small. It's like 3 pages of notes, and these kids struggle for a year and don't get it. And so I do think that if we had people coming in to the ages of 14 and 15, really confident thinkers, good at asking questions, good at making observations and predictions, we could teach them all the content later on. And so with our daughters, we're going to focus on way bigger task things, knowing that with really, really proficient learners, thinkers, readers, they're going to be able to catch up on the math content if they end up behind, which they're probably not anyways. But I really do think that when you pursue the higher order thinking, you're going to get it all in the end as far as mathematics goes.
I love this. I can't even tell you how much I love this, because it's so important for the kids to have the thinking capability and the practice of the thinking and just become natural to, and then the mechanics of it can be taught in so little amount of time when they're interested too, because they'll have that curiosity. Oh, you want to figure that out? Here's how we do it, you know, and they'll remember it because it was their question. And then also, I think what you're talking about too is a little bit of readiness in the thinking, because I know for when I was teaching, you know, 9th grade was the lowest grade I taught. I did teach 8th grade 1 year, but it was that some of the kids are ready for abstract thought there, and really deeper abstract thought, and some of them just aren't. And so it's really important for us to take into consideration that when we're doing this, like you said, this very abstract sort of algebra or whatever we're doing at the time, they have a really hard time with it if they can't make those thoughts. But if they're in that thinking, that questioning, and that's just part of their culture, part of who they are, then we can make that leap a little easier, especially when the readiness is there. And it might even hurry up the readiness. I mean, I don't know.
I think so. And, you know, when I think about the math content that we teach, kids are coming to high school with just like kind of a mess of random, it seems like random things that are mixed up. But as a public teacher who's taught Algebra 1, like I'm not teaching it this year, but I usually do. I would rather start from 0 with kids at 14 years old with algebra. Like, I don't want them to know what substitution is. I hope never seen an X in their life, never seen a graph in their, whatever, you know, a coordinate plane. I think, but have them come in really proficient with reasoning, like quantitative reasoning, which is just, number sense, and also proportional reasoning, which is where I think we fall down the most. If I could pick one thing, even as an algebra teacher, if I could pick one thing that in American education, and it's mostly public schools, but so many homeschool families are just buying click-through curriculums.
Absolutely.
And they're doing the same exact thing that's happening in the public schools at their kitchen table. Now, granted, it's going to go way better anyways, because parents are the most powerful role models in their kids' life. So if you are doing that, you're still going to do a better job in the public school. But could we do more? And I think about proportional reasoning and students' ability to reason about parts of a whole, percentages, not just their computational ability with fractions, decimals, and percents, which is also a big struggle, but even just thinking about something that's part of a whole or more than all of something, with percents that are greater than 100. If you don't have these reasoning skills, how on earth are you going to understand credit card debt? And I think about so many people I've talked to who, like my sister included, who just like got in a little bit of trouble and was just like, I just didn't know. No one ever told me. I didn't know. Sure, I knew things like credit cards are bad, credit cards are dangerous, interest rates are, but that's meaningless advice if you don't understand the patterns behind it. And so I think coming out of middle school, if we could just delete pre-algebra, algebra 1, advanced, whatever, and make sure kids were really, really confident thinkers, especially proportionally, they can totally learn linear algebra and basic quadratics and basic exponential functions in algebra 1. If they with those skills, they would be fine. They maybe even get beyond where kids are getting right now. But instead, there's just too many things covered. And I don't know if you've ever read Jo Boaler, but she has a new book out last year called Math-ish, which is really cool. My favorite part about it is an interview she records between her and David Coleman, who is the president of the College Board. And Jo Boaler is great. She's from Stanford. I used her book when I was an adjunct professor teaching the math methods course. That was like our textbook. She's really good, all about growth mindset. It's really good. You should totally read it. But in this interview, David Coleman talks about surveying college professors and high school teachers about mathematics, and that college professors say very few things matter, but they matter a lot. And when they surveyed high school teachers said everything matters. And he said his reaction was heartbreak, that there's so much stress and tension around mathematics learning because we're trying to do too much at a surface level. And what we really need to do is fewer things really deep. And anyways, go look at the book or go check out the podcast. It was a Freakonomics episode a while ago. It's so good. And when you think about the fact that not that many things are really required to succeed, even in academia, this is from college professors, what in the world are we doing with all this content we're throwing at kids? And then they get to the end and they barely know the content and they're not focused on algebraic reasoning. It's like we're chasing down each individual line item, and instead of getting what we want, we're not getting what we want, and we're missing the deeper thinking also.
I 100% agree. I feel the exact same way about writing. I feel like writing is pushed so early and it's pushed so hard. And in middle school, they're supposed to be doing these formulaic writings, which kills writing, and then they have to unlearn it in order to really write. And
right.
So there's so much that really gets damaged along the way, and then kids hate writing. I can go for a whole thing, but it's the same principle. And I know that for when I was teaching, and I know that you experience this as well, is a lot of the stuff we're talking about is not tangible in terms of products, and schools want products to be able to show parents that something is being accomplished, right? And so thinking is a conversation, right? It's a discussion. And maybe it's in writing, maybe it's not, right? But it depends, and that's a very hard thing to quantify in a product. And so I love this thinking, and I love what you're talking about very few things, because it's true. And so what kind of few things, what kind of things can we do as parents now, little, older kids, whatever, to implement or supplement, if we're using a math curriculum, how can we supplement and infuse the kind of thinking, reasoning that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think the three things that the college professors came back with was a fluent command of the four operations: multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, especially with fractions. So that's what we're all working on in elementary ed math facts, things like that. And again, not just remembering that 4 times 3 is 12, but why? Can you answer the question, how do you know? And we ask our girls that all the time. They come up with an answer. Okay, how do you know? And even when the how do you know is almost like silly or annoying, it's just good to think about your thinking and for them to tell us. And they don't think so. They love to talk. They talk all day long. So they'd be happy to answer questions like that. But asking questions like, how do you know? Not do you know what 4 times 3 is, but how do you know what 4 times 3 is, or why is 4 times 3 12? So things like that for sure. And then the next thing he goes into was problem solving and data analysis, which is a big category, and that probably relates the most to like observations, predictions, and patterns. And then his third thing was the heart of algebra, linear functions. And that, I mean, really probably doesn't need to start until high school. And so what should parents be doing now? I think you really want to, and of course, like, yeah, we have a math curriculum we use, and we're teaching them, they're going to memorize their math facts, no doubt. But we're talking to them a lot more about patterns. I love to use the word patterns instead of functions, which is an algebra term. And I love to say figuring things out instead of algebra, especially with my kids. But I even do it in my upperclassmen algebra classes. So I think with kids, like, go out and look for patterns and just describe them with words, whether you write them down in a little field journal or you just talk through them. But like, there's so many things to notice, and kids notice even more stuff than us. And the good thing about doing it this way is it's part of childhood. It's like mutually beneficial with wonder and curiosity and autonomy. You know, go for a walk in the woods, go on a hike, go canoe. And if you're not into the outdoor stuff, just walk around your yard. Look through toys like Legos or blocks or coloring, or draw patterns. You know, there's so many little crafts where you can look for patterns and then describe them with words. And then after that, I would say, if your kid's able, can you add some structure and organization to those observations, whether that's a bar graph or a diagram that's labeled. One thing we did is we sorted and measured seaweed at the beach. And so really awesome kinesthetic activity. I thought they were totally going to love sorting it and then totally hate the follow-up. But they didn't. They loved it. We ended up making bar graphs, which was a little bit of a stretch, but they liked it. Once they understood it, they were good to go. But basically, can they put words to, in their drawing of the activity, rockweed was the biggest pile of seaweed. Why? Well, because it was the most, right? On our bar graph, rockweed is the tallest bar. Well, why is it that? Well, because it's the most seaweed that we found. And so connecting multiple representations of patterns, one thing you'll need to be able to do that is have some structure, whether it's a graph or a picture or a list or a journal entry, or who knows, anything that they could do to represent their observations of a pattern in a different way. And then the thing from that, once you've looked at it, is can you ask questions and make predictions? Say your kid wants to start a dog walking business. Maybe he's in like 6th or 7th grade. All right, how many dogs are in your neighborhood? You know, maybe there's 5 dogs out of 12 houses. Okay, great. How many dogs live within walking distance of your house then? And use that. Put your boots on, walk around the neighborhood, and see what you can't figure out together. And it'll be messy and inefficient, but that's kind of the point. And I would say one good piece of advice, which I just always fail at, is don't give them the shortcuts. Don't give them the algorithms. Don't say to the kid who's, if there's 5 dogs and 12 houses, be like, oh, well, if there's 60 houses, then there's going to be, don't do that. They can't do that math yet. They don't need to learn that algorithm, that one little rule about proportions. Let them walk around and think about it out loud. Like, well, those 12 houses might have 5 more, then those might have 5 more. It's not the most efficient way to do it, but remember, your goal isn't to be accurate or even that they would ever start a dog walking business. Your goal is to get them asking questions and thinking. And, if they ever did, if your kid really did start a dog walking business one day, they would be able to say, this started with mathematical thinking and measuring, and it's just awesome. So I think if you can help them ask questions and make predictions, and then the hardest part would be answering those questions and testing those predictions. But again, if you have your eyes set on the process of engaging in deeper level thinking, because you're the teacher, you're trying to facilitate higher order learning around reasoning, That's your goal. So even if you do collect some cool observations, organize them, ask some questions, make predictions, and then realize it's kind of nonsense and you're never going to answer those questions, that's fine. That's fine. Hopefully you had some fun walking around doing it with your kids and you got some time to engage with them. But at the most, which is what you're shooting for at the most, is you're getting them to think abstractly and communicate their thinking externally so that you can reflect on it together.
I can't even tell you how much I love that, because this is something I talk about all the time with parents. And so I talk about playing card games, playing board games, playing things where you have to like strategy and think
Yeah.
what the forward thinking, that prediction, that consequence. If I do this, then that might happen. And you're also, when you have little kids, grouping like your play food into, stuff that's hard, stuff that's soft, stuff that's liquid, stuff that's, and in the play animals into animals with fur, animals without fur, animals with feathers, and things that are just, or colors, things like that. The patterns are so important, because if we don't have that later, we have a lot of trouble with reasoning.
There's great applications of that. And another great application for future algebraic thinking is sharing stuff. So whether you're going to like have a party and invite people over and you're cooking, how many people does this feed, but again, with those things, like try to think of yourself as a coach as much as a teacher. Let it be messy. Like let them finish a whole batch of cookies and then realize that there's not enough and start over again. It'll be dramatic and messy, but if you just tell them it's not enough, then you've deleted their need to think about it. And so with my kids, like they'll want to, our neighbors are the cousins. And so we'll do something cool and like, can we have the cousins come? Yeah, go get them. We don't have enough for them though. What do we need to do? And then it's like, oh, well, we need more of this and more of that. And those things, they're so simple but so engaging for them. They're not capable of much more anyways. But if I just said to my 5-year-old, okay, we need double the amount of this and we need 3 more of that, then it's just, what's the point? It's missing a really organic opportunity for her to participate in the thinking and planning of something that she wants to do. She wants to have the cousins over. So I think little things like that, especially like you said, sorting toys, tea parties, baking something, cooking dinner, those things are awesome. And anything you share, Easter, jelly beans. Okay, can I have jelly beans? Well, do you have enough to share with everybody who's here? Well, I don't know. Let me go count. That stuff is perfect applications of quantitative reasoning.
Absolutely. And I love the be messy part, because it's so hard not to just say. And I know
Yeah.
I'm so guilty of that. And I was just having a conversation with my son, who's 16 and a half, the other day, about the time and the passage of time, and just understanding how long something takes. Because if we're giving them a period of time, saying, okay, take this much time to do this, especially like in school, they give you a period of time. For the next 20 minutes, we're going to do this. For the next, you have 30 minutes to get this done. You have 15 minutes to do this. And it's very prescribed. And so then we have people that don't understand what they can accomplish in a certain amount of time, becomes very uncertain. And then they think they can accomplish more, but they don't understand, or they think, oh, I don't have enough time for that, but they don't know. And so we were talking about that. And I was saying, you have to be looking at the clock frequently, and you have to notice, well, how much time did that take? How much time did that take? And how, like, oh, I accomplished this in this amount of time, and just start to understand how much time things take, so that you understand what 15 minutes means. What does the capacity of 15 minutes have for me, right?
Yeah, and the whole idea of like growth mindset, if you've read Carol Dweck, but like failure is learning. Like honestly, I mean, how did I learn to drive safer? Well, I got 3 speeding tickets in high school. You know what I mean? Like that really hurt.
Yeah.
And I had to like admit I was, so I think sometimes learning the hard way, we all learn things the hard way. And when I say hard way, I mean by experience. And so if we're bailing our kids out and telling them what to do each time, then they're not really having to be late to something and suffer the consequences. And it's like, I don't have teenagers yet, but I'm like, if your kid's late to something, it will be embarrassing. And good.
Yeah.
That will help them be more conscious of time later. And I think, I love the quote. I think it's Piaget, but I actually looked it up and it was like sort of unattributed. But the quote that says, every time we teach a child something, we rob them of the opportunity to discover it on their own. And now, obviously, we can't do that with everything. We're going to teach them a ton of stuff. We can't wait for them all to maybe be Euclid. And we don't want to. We got other stuff to do. We got more fun stuff to do. But we do want to look for opportunities to do that. And I think in my classes, I really do try to facilitate self-discovery, because I do think that things like distribution are discoverable once you're 14 or 15 years old. But with our kids in relation to time or cooking or proportional reasoning, giving them opportunities to just be so wrong it's almost laughable as they calibrate, because guessing and checking is a legitimate problem-solving strategy. It's not the most efficient, and it's not always the best, and it can be a little bit juvenile in some situations, but we're talking about kids. They're supposed to be juvenile. They're supposed to be figuring it out. And so entertaining some guess and check stuff is going to be awesome. And I think this probably sounds really overwhelming to do. I've been doing it and thinking about it for 10 years, and it's overwhelming for Katie and I to do with our daughters. Yeah. It's a ton of work. But I think I would say two things. One, if it doesn't work, you can always fall back on the click-through courses and know that you're still going to do a better job than the public schools, probably. But two, you're going to get what you put in, you're going to get out. Again, are you focused on creating capable students, or are you focused on creating capable people? That most of our students most of our kids are going to have identities that are way more important than being a student. Even the ones that are really great students, by the time they're my age, I'm 39, the fact that I was ever a student is such a tiny part of who I am now. And so even if your kid loves being a student, is a really good student, thrives in college, that's still just a tiny piece of who they are as a person. And so instead of worrying about what type of students our kids are going to be, how they're going to do in school, we should be concerned with what type of people they're going to be. And I want my daughters to be the type of people who are able to figure stuff out, able to help other people, able to participate in a hard situation. And those are things that you could miss out on and still get to AP Calculus and get into a good college, but not be the type of person who's able to help, to take somebody else's burdens on themselves or participate in a tough situation. And so I don't have a problem with AP Calculus. I hope my daughters both do it, but I definitely don't want it at the cost of the more important stuff. And that's the bigger risk that I see.
You are speaking my language, Brian, for sure. Every single person I talk to, every single parent I talk to, we talk about that end goal first. Who are we trying to raise? That's the most important question, because it dictates everything we do. One of the also things I think is a misnomer that it's hard to create, to get all the things in. And we're not, if we think about that, then first of all, that's not even going to happen. Teachers don't do that. We don't get all the things in. We just we always have gaps. But second thing is that and that's one of the reasons why my business is called the Freedom Scholars, because it's also freedom from the freedom to learn, and the freedom from the the keeping busy and the checking the boxes, right? So you're speaking my language. Totally feel you in this area. So Brian, I know that you are doing some tutoring and stuff like that too, and I want to acknowledge you for this amazing conversation. Just really so grateful, because this is the conversation I've wanted to have for so long about math, and I really, really, really appreciate your perspective. And so tell us about your tutoring and how we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I teach a course called Financial Algebra, which the curriculum expired years ago and the options were junk, and I ended up kind of writing my own course, and I sold it on Teachers Pay Teachers for a little while, but that was kind of a pain in the butt. So I ended up trying to run it in small groups, because I tried to get it mandatory at our school and people didn't really want to do it, and it's this amazing class. But anyways, that led me to really seeing a need. People are looking for help with algebra. And so right now I started a small tutoring business called Relevant Learning, which is all online. And I don't do a lot, but I do a little bit. And I'll open 5 more spots up next month. Big percentage of them are homeschool students. A big percentage of the students I work with are students who have struggled with Algebra 2 and want help. Some of them are students who did really well in Algebra 1 and want to get ahead of Algebra 2. And so you can find me on Facebook. Relevant Learning is the page. My email is info@relevantlearning.me. I'm sure you'll post some text.
Oh, yes. Your
copy
info
somewhere.
will
Yeah.
always be anywhere this is at.
But what really inspired this is I took a sabbatical last year for a bunch of reasons. Maybe on a different podcast, I could tell you more about it. And we spent the year doing two things. One, I taught, I have my second master's degree is ELS, English as a Second Language, ESL, sorry. So I spent the first half of the year teaching English as a second language at a community center in Portland because there's a huge, West African refugee population in Portland, Maine. And then the second half of the year, and my daughters came with me, so I taught those classes, and they provided childcare for the infants whose parents were in my English classes, which was an amazing thing to do as a family.
That's
second half of the
awesome.
year, we went to Costa Rica to learn Spanish, and I also taught English there as well as a little bit, but to volunteer with an organization that builds houses. It's kind of like Habitat for Humanity in America. And so it was this amazing year, this amazing experience. I'm sure that all the things that, monkeys and toucans and surfing, whatever. But for me, the big takeaway was I want to be a part of the homeschool thing that's going on in my family. And I'm really not, I'm at work all day. And so coming out of that, is what inspired me to start this tutoring business. I also have a local thing here about outdoor education, but the goal for me would be to, my tutoring business could grow, would be to decrease my employment at the school, maybe to zero one day. But really do think that what you're talking about, Cami, taking responsibility for your own kids' education, I just think it's the most important. It might be the most important thing that I'll do with my life. It will definitely be the most important thing I do with my life for the next 10 years until they're out of the house. And so I don't want to get halfway through that window and be like, I wish I had I wish I'd been more around. And I'm really around. I'm as present as any working parent I know, but I'm talking about probably what lots of people listening know about, but that conviction for presence with my kids. And I'm not worried. I don't think I'm going to do a better job teaching them than you or anybody else would. I just want to be there. I want to be there for it. I know it's good for their development as people to be with their parents, and I just want to do it. And so that's why I started the tutoring business. And really it's with my eyes on being more flexible and able to participate in our homeschool approach with our two daughters.
Yeah, and you know what? If I had to pick a math tutor, it would for sure be someone that thought in a way that was building thinking instead of just doing, getting them through a textbook or getting them through a curriculum. So I definitely appreciate that. I encourage all of you. I think it's pretty clear anybody listening to this is going to be like, yes. I love this, and I sign up with it. And so this perspective, this conversation is so important. It's so enlightening. And I appreciate you bringing it into a subject matter because I'm talking about this stuff all the time, and then bringing it into something where people don't think it's possible. And so they think math, I have to do the math. Well, in the curriculum, and that's the only way I can do it. So I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this conversation, because I know it's inspired a lot of people. I'm super juiced about it, and I hope everybody reaches out to Brian. If you're looking for a master, you're looking for even just book with a time with him to just figure out how you can do better for your kids in homeschool. Because I think yeah.
And I also have a Facebook group, which we can link to the thing, but I just do free trainings every week, and I post free resources. So I also wrote this mathematical modeling problem set. It's not a curriculum. It's maybe 60 pages, and I use it with students all the time, and I use it in tutoring, and I use it in school and everything. But I had been selling it in Teachers Pay Teachers, but that website's so clunky, I just gave up. And I just give it away for free in that group. So I'll talk about a problem that's about the investing in an index fund and exponential functions, and I'll do it on video, and then I'll also post the problems. And so, especially for parents whose kids are dealing with algebra now, it can be really overwhelming to find resources. So if you jump in that group, I'll definitely give you resources. And algebra is a big deal for high schoolers. I mean, it's the majority of the SAT math. 50% of kids who took college algebra last year, there's about 1 million kids who took college algebra, 50% failed it. What a waste of time and money. And it is a course that people should be getting an A in because its overlap with Algebra 2 content is like 80%. And so it really is just a condemnation of the way that we do algebra, or the way that kids engage with algebra in public schools, that they could be taking a class for a second time, paying thousands of dollars and failing it. And so anyways, if you jump in that group, there's all sorts of cool stuff, especially if you have high school kids or middle school kids, that might be a help for you. And I would obviously love to talk to anybody about this more. So.
Obviously. I love it. I'm super excited about it. Thank you so much for being with us today, Brian. You guys, I will see you next week, and make sure to reach out to his Facebook group and for tutoring services. Bye-bye.